Hey everybody. So I've been asked, how do I know where to go when I'm doing my shamanic projects? Like people have, before the scamdemic, the whole COVID thing in 2020 and continuing now, I was traveling Europe. I was spending usually 6, 7 months a year out of the country, mostly in Eastern Europe. And people are like, well, how did that all happen? And what about the times you went to these other places and did these other things? That was all spontaneous. It was all totally unplanned. I was just following what we call the shamanic flow. And in that, I would meet people that I was to be working with because it was just kind of like really obvious the way things were laying out so well. And then I'd be able to figure out what their purpose was and why I was working with them, see where they were going to be going in their future, and so on, and the benefit for the local area. And these kinds of encounters with the people are really important because, as one woman who's now a shaman, named Orshi, uh, asked me, or one time she was helping me get into Cluj-Napoca, the part of Transylvania, part of Romania. And she was like, well, we can get you so many classes, you can teach the people. And so she was a great organizer, great promoter before she became an apprentice. And I'm like, really, I appreciate your efforts, but the best thing I could do is train one person, a local person, who becomes a shaman and serves this area for how many ever years afterwards, even when I'm gone. And so that's usually the biggest part of my community service type of workload. My other workload is mostly one-on-one appointments with people for a variety of reasons. And so, but in her case, for instance, she invited me into that area. Now, before that, I met a girl named Rita, another Romanian girl in the CK fold, same part of Transylvania part of Romania. I met her on Hollover Beach in Miami, and just a spontaneous thing, and we got to know each other, and then she invited me to come over to her country. Okay. And that's pretty much how it's been through my shamanic career. And one thing leads to another that leads to another, and I don't have any plan of what I'm doing when I get to whatever area. And again, so that part of when I went to Romania, that started a 5-year journey. So that was January 2015, and then I came back from that March 2020, and then the COVID thing, we know that story. And since then, I've been in Texas building a boat, for my environmental work. So these are the phases that you go through. So in 45 years that I've been doing this as a career, that's been my pattern. And so the shamanic flow just kind of picks me up and moves me to these places where I do these things for a certain amount of time. Sometimes I know I'm going to be in an area almost to the day. Detroit was one. I was there one year and 1 week, and I was happy to leave that, by the way. Sometimes I'm going to places I just don't want to go to, but I have to do that because that's the call. And the other part about it is the people that I work with. Some projects look like they're going to have a long lifespan, but then the main person of that story, of that adventure, just stops in progress. So that basically pulls the plug on what I would be doing in that area. And sometimes I can be working with someone on the other side of the planet, which is something that happened recently, with a young woman that, I think I might have mentioned her in other videos, where her father was paralyzed in like a waking coma. And within 6 weeks, we got him to where he could move his eyes, follow, her around, flex his feet, and trying to sit up. And she was going to be the next person in Hungary to really launch that country forward in its spiritual journey, but then backed up, so that just ended that trip right there. Now, that power that wanted her to do that, and maybe we could go into life purposes, maybe that's what she was really supposed to be doing, that power goes someplace else. It gets distributed to someplace else. And so then that changes the whole course of where I'm going to be going. And so I just wait. All I can do is my best and doing the best that I can do with the people that I'm working with the conditions that I'm working in. And then I just leave it up to however it works out. And this is a really important thing I want to talk to people about on this video too, is when people have that life purpose, or they seem that really strong drive that gets them to connect with me initially, or the series of events that lead up to us meeting, and the dreams that they have and so on. And then I work with them and I watch their skill sets improve. I watch them start to manifest their desires and their lifestyle changes, healings. I mean, it's a wide range of things that get me to meet people, work with people, and so on. And then they'll just pull back for whatever reason. A lot of it's fear of the power. A lot of it's just, most of it, realistically, is they just don't want to break free from certain limitations. In another video earlier about I did with power, about how they just want to stay in one certain spot. If I was to describe these growth periods that people call the physical plane and everyday life ground zero, and in the scale of 1 to 10, we can get up to, like, let's say a 3 or a 4, like the girl I was talking about in Hungary, where I was getting her father from waking coma, paralyzed for a year, up so he can move around. And I'm still waiting for an update, to see if he can actually sit up now. Where that's like a 2 or a 3, in the scale of things. I was part of a project where I was helping basically a nobody, Alvaro Uribe, become president of Colombia, and I was commissioned to do that from somebody, another shaman that was working in the White House translating for President Clinton. And now we're talking maybe a 6, because you're changing the trajectory, political trajectory of a hemisphere. So, and Andres, he continued on, to do some other great things. There were 2 shamans I worked with. Actually, Andres was a 2nd generation shaman, meaning that I trained a woman, a French woman named Aliette Cross, to be a shaman, and then she trained him. So there was almost 16 years into that kind of a span. But anyway, so people that I work with, either one-on-one or come to me through classes and other activities, sometimes I just meet on other projects, it becomes like a shamanic awakening, and then they can just be like, oh wow, I think this is my life purpose. I'm supposed to be doing these things from these dreams and so on. And we can flow like that. But mainly it just happens that people just don't. They get stuck in this position. And I keep telling people, I'm like, well, this is a normal process for you to start looking around like, uh-oh, I feel like I'm losing myself. I feel like I'm losing reality. Well, in one way you are, but you're losing almost like a false reality. It's real to you because you grew up in this conditioning, the programming that comes from your social, religious, and family thing, and then also the personal program that you start to modify to live in the everyday physical world to kind of fit in, because it's a real problem with humanities have with rejection, because in our early stages that meant death almost. But now people can be more self-sufficient. And I asked them, before you just completely quit this and go back into everyday life, I'm going to ask you to just go into this kind of a hibernation period. Let's stay in contact. And those are 2 things. When they go through this one, or they go through the part where they feel they went too far too fast, I say, let's stay in contact. Tell me what's going on with you. Let me help you through that. And sometimes they go, I just think you're trying to coerce me into going into your cult thing. Oh, okay, fine. Have a nice day. Like I keep saying, of all the stimuli people have to choose from, they choose fear the most. It's just amazing. And so if you happen to be going through that feeling of uncertainty and not knowing really what is was this really your life purpose? Is this really your mission in life? Is this really your destiny to go through? That's your ego. A lot of it, I think, is just kind of like, wait a minute, we're just losing control. Ego wants to have control. Ego's job is to make you safe, keep you from blindfolding yourself and running out into rush hour traffic. Stupid tricks like that. And it likes to have purpose. It likes to give itself importance. At the same time, it doesn't like uncertainty. And there's a certain adventurous spirit that you really have to go into or step out of the basic, the very few first steps of Shamanism 101 to get, and it takes that more of an adventurous personality to step past that box. It's like stepping out of the box and then jumping off of the table that the box is on and out of the house that the table's in. It just keeps on going, and then finally you do learn to live. You should learn to live between the two worlds, the perceived realities, the accepted realities of the everyday person and the everyday life, or the universal realities, which is basically chemistry and physics, that dictate, the essentials of what we call life as we know it. The real shamanism is getting behind the scenes of the universal reality, and that's where the real power is. I worked with a lot of people that had terminal diseases, and they were given death dates by the doctors, and I got them past that. Sometimes a couple months, sometimes a few years, and sometimes they're still living. A lot of it. But again, as one biochemist said, I helped them rewrite the script in a way their logical mind can accept it, and the spine does the rest. But there's certain parts of that, when they rewrite the script and accept it and go into the healing, for instance, or go into these huge life changes, then there's the other part where they hit that chapter that just reignites doubt. And then the rest of the old lifestyle comes back with a vengeance. So it takes a real art, and that's why I say the first part of the apprenticeship is to get you so centered and so fine-tuned into your core truths of who you are, so when these things happen, you have something to hold on to. It's like the absolute truth of your identity, no matter how many lives you've lived. And that's another concept. So if we want to believe in reincarnation, we say, well, I was this person, this character in this life, and I did these things, and so on and so on. And I do not believe karma in general, and especially tagging it on with you life after life. That would be the most unfair thing ever. But I do believe there's going to be that one part of you that is the truest identity that's always coming back life after life. That's your foundation, your core, your seed atom. That's something that the Rosicrucians used to call it, your seed atom. And that will always be that unique identity unto you and no one else, and unadulterated, no matter what you've been through. But if you're not at that point, then you can fall prey or fall victim into the old programming when it snaps back, and you start to get away from your, let me get rid of a spam call, and you get away from that path that you were on in your upper levels of shamanism. The last video I did on power, I asked people, how much power would you want to have, and what would you do for it? And to do that, you really have to step out of the box. You really have to if you see something that you really feel is your life purpose in your upper levels of shamanism, and you're like, okay, but I would have to do these types of energetic exercises, and that would mean getting away from my perceived reality about what's good and what's bad, what's evil, what's manipulation, and how does that affect my perceptions of relationships, and duties, responsibilities, and so on. It does a major overhaul on people. And if you're not really to look at these things fully objectively, and only in the sense of a universal truth, then it becomes a difficult journey spiritually, mentally, and physically. So think about these things. Again, when you were looking at how much power would you like to have, what kind of thing would you really love to do, what would you be willing to do for them, what would you be willing to give up to have that kind of power and abilities and understanding to be able to manipulate reality to do what you perceive as good. And that's, again, we have to take responsibility. You know, we're going to have to do something. And yes, what we think is right could be another person's wrong, but that's all part of being a mature adult. I mean, that's part of being the mature shaman. You're going to look at something and go, I think this is just wrong, and I'm going to step in and fix this. And that's who you are at that time, in that incarnation, and you're taking responsibility for it. You may look back on that after death and go, maybe I shouldn't have, whatever. Or you might look at it like, I should have pushed harder. You don't know. Think about these things, people. Catch you guys later.